I want to start with reading some quotes from The Alchemist.
Okay.
Just so we can give people an understanding of who we're talking about and what we're talking about, and just give a little like fun opener. So I'm just going to tell the internet to give me quotes from...
Oh, yeah, you're just like, give me some quotes.
Alchemist. Yeah, I didn't write any down. I can think of a couple.
Phil Phails at Philosophy.
When I was reading through this, I was like, why was this so meaningful to so many people?
Yeah.
I think part of it is whatever's going on with like the larger framework. It is a book that has these 2-3 sentence meditations, quotes. It's very quotable, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people read that and they're like, oh, that line really speaks to me. That thought really speaks to me. And it's kind of full of those kinds of idiomatic extractions, right?
Within the context of a classic hero's journey.
Yeah, although kind of in a different way because of the way it ultimately resolves, right? Because the spoiler alert.
Hey, spoiler alert. We're going to talk about this book.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to talk about the things that happened in this book. We're going to talk, and we're not going to, so this is whole video spoiler alert.
Right, exactly. Right? Spoiler alert.
If you want to help whatever class you're taking, we want you to read the book, though. Read the book, but this can help you because we're going to go over it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But I find the kind of like journey to the thing and then the discovery that the thing is not the thing, but you got to go back home to get the thing.
Well, the thing was there all along,
right, exactly.
Inside of himself.
Right.
Hidden in plain sight.
Which is basically what everyone's telling me the whole time is like, dude, it's just you. Like, you got this. Right?
Yeah. Okay, you ready for some quotes?
All right, quotes.
Here, I'm just going to, this one from the back of the book, I'll start with. It's a beautiful image there with the moon, and it's radiating kind of like as if it was the sun. And the quote is, to realize one's destiny is a person's own obligation. That's agency. I mean, it's basically saying like, you got agency.
Yeah, although it's a weird kind of way of thinking about agency to me. I mean, like the notion, I guess like this is a thing that I find interesting to think about with it, because it does, like this kid's journey to freedom, right? This kid's journey to agency is all caught up in this narrative of destiny. Like, you've got
personal legend.
You've got this thing to do.
Right.
And you gotta just listen to it and respond to it, which I don't know, like that's,
so
I resist
playing
that.
with two things. We're playing with fatalism or destiny, or like that everything, this gets into that question of, is everything already planned out for you? What, and then on the other side, you got this quote that's like, it's your obligation. So if you have an obligation to do something, that means it's not all laid out for you. It's not destiny. It's not fate. It's determined by the choices you make.
Right, because if you've got an obligation to do something, the only way you can have an obligation to do something is if there's the alternative to not do it.
You could not do it. Right. You've got a choice point.
Right. You can't be obligated to do things that you're going to do inevitably or are impossible for you to do. Right.
So this is like, they're both coming together in a real like interesting way of.
And I'm never convinced that the destiny narrative is real. I mean, it is in the story to some extent because of the way it plays out, but that's what he's talking about. It's almost like throughout the whole book, I keep thinking like, it's more about, hey, life is stressful. You're going on crazy journeys. You're going to get robbed by thieves in the desert.
You're going to get beaten up.
You're going to get beaten up. Like all the things are going to go
taken advantage of.
And the best way to operationalize your life is just to assume that you've got something you got to go to.
Yeah. Personal legend.
And that the universe is guiding you there, even though that's probably BS. Right?
Yeah.
But it just, it gets you through the day. It helps you make the right choices. It helps you not collapse into, I mean, if you go back to Santiago's sort of original space, right? He's a shepherd. And part of what I find interesting is he's relatively content.
He seemed content.
Right? It's not that
he was influenced.
Right. It's not that he's like leading this miserable life.
No.
It's just a very quotidian life, right? It's
What life?
Quotidian, like
Quotidian.
like day to day.
For everybody out here who doesn't know the definition of quotidian, which is probably 99% of y'all. Grant's gonna.
I bet more of you know quotidian than me.
Go ahead.
Or
put it in the comments if you know quotidians.
Right.
He's gonna define it for us right now.
Yeah. So this I mean just everyday regular day to day life, right? That's
okay.
Yeah. So it's not exciting. It's not an adventure. It's not seeking your destiny. It's a householder life, right? If you go back to that kind of classic Buddhist householder versus yogi, it's a householder life. And then he's got to mess it all up to kind of go on this journey. Although I think he ends up back there.
He does, because that's where the treasure was.
Right, where the treasure is, and he's kind of retreating that life. And then it ends with him like getting the girl.
He gets the girl.
Which I found like, I'm just like, come on.
He gets the treasure, he gets the girl.
Did you have to make this a Hollywood movie? Like, come on. The whole Fatima thing seemed like this sort of like
the Fatima,
the kind of subplot that like the producers put in because they're like, it's not going to sell if we don't have a romance. Right.
That's right. I read this book in a couple different ways. I audiobooked it. I read a graphic novel of it.
Oh, you read the graphic novel,
which was pretty cool. I wanted pictures.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it seems like the kind of narrative. Was it done well? Was the art good?
I thought so.
Yeah, because it lends itself to that, and that's
some of the artwork seemed to be like tailored for a male audience, especially the first scenes about Narcissus and the angels, or those people that came. They were full figured.
They were really sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like Jessica Rabbit of they like it was good. I enjoyed it. I was like, yeah, okay. But that was it. The rest of it seemed to be really just normal. I don't know why they like they wanted to hook in the guys on the first chapter. Like, they're gonna benefit from this.
It was published in the 90s.
Let's get them
like comic books were all about that in the 90s, or graphic novels. Yeah.
Okay, next quote. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it.
Yes.
Which I've heard this quote. I heard it. One of the first things I did in this production thing is I helped produce a podcast for Bob Peck, and he interviewed this guy, and they were talking about a bunch of stuff, and this quote came up. I think it was like, follow your dream. And this is like, you need to start on that path, and then I guess what it means to me is if I start projecting out my dream, if I start projecting out the life that I am, if this is what I am, not this is what I want to be. If I say this is what I am, the world will see me as that, and then give me communications and offers and come to me for that assistance when they need it. So then I'll gradually go towards a professionalism in that, or a career in that, because I'll slowly be seen as that and then asked to contribute in that way.
But do you think that's what that quote is saying? Because it's not about who you are, it's what you want.
Let's see. Let's read it again. When you want something, all the universe... Yeah, you're right. When you want something. I think you got to do more than just want it.
Yeah.
This seems to not let this person put much skin in the game. Oh, I just got to want it?
Yeah. Although it's a very inspiring thing to say to someone who's like, man, I really want this, but I'm not sure if I should go for it. And you can be like, if you want something, the whole universe conspires to make you succeed.
That's what it did to me.
And you're like, oh yeah, I should go do it. I should
go do it. Yeah,
should quit my job and go see the pyramids.
But really, it's like...
it's true in as much as it's effective in instantiating that change in state that's needed for you to do the thing you want.
But it's baloney. What it should be, what they should say is, when you start doing the thing and not getting paid for it for a while,
hit home a little,
all the universe eventually will like start paying attention, and and they'll help you out.
Yeah, a little bit here and there.
You need here and there enough, and then a part of the universe is gonna put some negative comments in your.
And then there's thieves in the desert that beat you up and take your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And someone with a glass shop that'll end up, you'll be working for years and years and years, and kind of like a seeming like wasted time.
Right.
But probably wasn't, because it's that experience of helping someone, and he realized some confidence through that.
Well, I mean, yes. And I think that's the thing, is it's like, it is the hero's journey in that like the journey is irrelevant. It's fundamentally irrelevant. The treasure, the goal, what you want. Like what he wants is this treasure.
Right.
Like
He wants the treasure.
This lady said there's a treasure for you and it's your obligation to go find
He's got to give her 10%.
Right.
Right.
And he goes and he does that. And at times he's got like the equivalent of the treasure and he could go back. Like when the alchemist makes the gold and divides it up into 4 portions.
Yeah, that's right.
Like he could have just taken that gold and been like,
he'd been
hey,
good.
I got some treasure.
Yeah.
Like it's not where you said to go, but and then he gets there and it kind of works out, but it's also a lot. And I just remember at the end, like, I think he's talking to the alchemist and he's like, the treasure wasn't there. I had to go, but like he's digging for the treasure and I got to go home. And I think it's at that point, but they basically say, well, you got to see the pyramids.
What they're saying is experience is your teacher,
Right.
and you had to have this journey in order to realize
Right.
that home was where the gold was.
Right. But also just like, yeah, like.
He had a great life. He had to run around to realize that the
Right.
great life was great.
Right. And I do think to that extent, you've got an interesting thing to ponder here. It's like in the ancient Greek world, you find this debate happening across different texts in Greek literature about when you know that you're happy and when can you know you've had a good life.
Yeah.
And and what emerges is this common idea that you don't know you've been happy. You can't judge that you've had a happy life. You can't judge that you've had a good life. And again, when we're thinking happiness here, think happiness in terms of like eudaimonia, right?
Eudaimonia.
You had a full, rich, not kind of momentary happiness, right? So you don't know that until you die, because you could have this great life and you could do things, but you just don't have that perspective till you're at the end of the narrative,
The arc, what it was
to look
like.
back
Yeah.
on the whole thing. And to some extent, that also then reframes things so you can say, and you see this emerge, like, how can you evaluate the thing that you are trying to decide what to do if at the end of life, if at your deathbed, you looked back, what choice would be the one you would regret?
Yeah.
What choice would be the one you would celebrate, right?
Yeah, there's folks that interview elderly people right before they die, and they say, what's your biggest regret? And they would say the things I didn't do.
Yeah, it's interesting because a few years ago, like 10 years ago, I taught this book called In the Course of a Lifetime, which I really love this book. And it's part of a larger series of studies that came out of this like one of the largest longitudinal human development studies, which is very hard to maintain and do. But basically, they had 2 different cohorts of people. I think the first started in the 30s and the second in the 50s. It was out of Berkeley. Like, it moves between research centers who does this, because like basically they just tracked these people from teenage years and interviewed them about their life. It's a human lifetime study, right? And they did these 20 hours of interview about their life. And then 20 years later, the same researcher or their student or another researcher came along and said, all right, let's get the funding to track these people down and say where you are at, right? And so that study produced this large volume of data on these 2 cohorts of people in California, from really teenagedom to elder life and death, right? So we have that data now. We have all that. And so there's a number of studies that come out of it. In the course of the lifetime was looking at human spirituality over the course of a lifetime.
Oh, okay.
Which is what I was interested in. It was in it for an American religion class. So I was looking at kind of like, how do Americans experience spirituality and spiritual development and growth
through phases of life,
right? From a kind of social scientific perspective, right? That's what we were doing in the class. And it was interesting looking at elder years and what people did or didn't regret, and both what they did and didn't regret and what led to kind of the things that seemed to indicate contentment, etc. And most people didn't regret things they didn't do, right? You get those anecdotes.
They didn't regret things.
They weren't like regretful that I didn't go on that trip to Paris.
Okay. Yeah.
They were always most regretful about losing community. And again, similarly, like in terms of life outcomes,
using friendships, social things.
It was social networks. It was connections with people. It was actually the stuff that is probably the stuff you're going to develop better if you just stay in place and be a good shepherd, right?
Yeah.
Than going out on big adventures. But yeah,
investing in your community.
The community network was the key thing, and you know, part of what I was looking at was religiosity. And you saw this sort of, when people retire, they tend to go back to church, right?
Because they got some time. Well, they're probably looking for community.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is like initially people were like, oh, they're scared they're going to die and want to make sure.
No,
and
they've got a void of community that the job.
Void of community.
That the job left.
And they returned to the church to.
That could be the job community. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it left a deep impression on me on how important, if we're and how important this was to all the other things that they looked at sort of for spiritual development.
Yeah.
Fellowship, sangha, like community is actually probably far more important than how you pray, what you meditate, etc. Like those are part of what exists within the container of the community. But you need a community.
Yeah. And from a brain health perspective, when I was researching like dementia or Alzheimer's or things that would strengthen and exercise the brain, one of it was having a rich social network, because you hold all that in your brain and you constantly refresh it with new information about people. So it's like a car that you drive versus one that you leave in the garage. It's going to deteriorate faster. If you're using it, you're actually maintaining it.
And I'm sure that like, I don't want to dismiss too much like networking that happens remotely and whatnot, but to some extent, I'm sure that that's for brain health also about like the deep information that you get when you're interacting with someone one-on-one, when you're in a group, when you're navigating social environments.
Yeah.
And not just sort of like how many followers you have in a social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it probably is real. In a real life scenario, you get more fidelity.
All right. Another quote.
It's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting. It's the possibility of having
this is
a
all
dream
tied to
come true.
dreams. Have you ever had a dream and then said, I got to go do that because I had a dream?
No.
Neither have I. Like I read things about that, like where people have like in narratives.
I think they just use the word dream for something they want.
Right. But it's often in the narrative.
I don't think they actually dream it. They're not like, I'm managing 15 Starbucks regionally. Like, who has, I'm like, a gold in miner or something, and I find a bunch of gold. Or
I will say, when I was a kid, and I can't remember if it was like late adolescence, like late middle school or early high school, I had this crazy dream. And it was very vivid. And it was like some weird fantasy dream. I remembered like there were kind of scenes that were like in the woods near where I played, but were like kind of scenes of battle, like the Hoth battle in Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Right? Kind of like it had that kind of and there was just a lot going on like that. Like it felt like this sort of fantasy adventure. And I remember it kind of ended with all these kind of night dudes riding across this field.
That's a rich dream.
Right. And it was one of the most vivid dreams I've had in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And they just sort of like were riding across this field. And I was like disembodied by that point in the dream and just sort of an observer.
Mm-hmm.
And there were probably like a dozen of them. And they're kind of riding off into the distance across this field. And then as they kind of approached the end of the field, they like turned into planets and then just sort of elevated up into the night sky. And there was some like narrative voice that said something pithy like, and they will become as gods. Or, I don't think that's what it said.
That happened in your dream?
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure it was just like under the influence of a lot of media. I think probably the thing I had most recently watched was Time Bandits that kind of probably shaped that.
Yeah.
But, But it shook me in this way where I do look back at my early development as a human being, and it's one of the things that kind of shook me out of kind of like, I'm on this train, I'm going to school, I'm going to go to college, I'm just going to do the thing and do the life and just...
It told you to find something higher.
Right, and something like somehow that shifted me into this like, it's a crazier, bigger, stranger world than I ever knew, and I want to be part of the strangeness.
Yeah.
I want to be part of the curiosity. I want to be part of I want a life that I did through my younger, like coming out of that, I wanted a life that was beyond the quotidian, right? That was beyond being the shepherd.
You were called from your shepherd job.
Right. Yeah, and so my 20s were a lot of adventuring, right? A lot of running around. I had a period of time for 3 months where my partner and I at the time took $300 in our car and headed to California and met our friend who was a musician and drove him around for 4 months. And he was doing house parties where he would just play music, and we would drive him from venue to venue, and we'd sell t-shirts and take donations and get enough for them,
Yeah.
and just sort
Bohemian.
of right. Lots of kind of that kind of life in my 20s. And I remember by my late 20s, like, cool, I pulled it off. Like,
yeah, you did it.
I could die now and I'm cool. And I have sort of been like, I don't want to die now, but that's more out of a sense of obligation to...
Your adventures are over?
No, not necessarily. My drive for adventure is over.
Your drive for adventure.
Like, I've had the adventures. There could be more adventures, but I'm definitely in a state of life where I'm more interested in building, right? I'm more interested in being. I'm more interested in
phase of life thing.
Dwelling. I mean, yeah, I'm 51, right?
51.
Yeah, so like there's a level at which like we do have these phases of life. I do think like if you look at classic Hinduism, you've got the idea of the 4 phases of life, right? Where you start off as a student, and then you become a householder, and then you become a forest dweller, and then finally at the end of life you become a Shrimana, right? Someone who's really seeking enlightenment as their whole focus, right? And it's this sort of, I'm definitely in that householder phase, right?
Yeah.
And there's part of me that's like, maybe that, like, I don't know about that other stuff at the end. It's cool, but
yeah.
But
might not be worth the time, or it might not even be there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's here, right? It's always here. Anyway, next quote.
When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. When we love I guess I could see this as a love for self. I don't want to think that we have to have some romantic thing to initiate self-improvement.
I don't think it's talking about romantic love, or maybe it is in the book. If this,
I guess you love anything,
right? I mean,
you're going to want to serve, yourself and it.
I do think we have a deep poverty in our understanding of love in our culture, because when we hear love, 98% of the time we think romantic love.
That's right.
And romantic love is romantic love is great, right? And don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's a very specific kind of love that seems, doesn't seem well suited to be the template for love.
Yeah, because it's the smallest percentage.
Right.
If you're a monogamous person, or even if you're polyamorous, you're going to have 1 or 2 people in the world that you share that type of experience with, that type of love. But if you've got a rich social network, you're in communities, the vast majority of those people are going to be not romantic. And I would assume you'd experience love with them.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the love you have for your friends,
yeah,
the love you have for your kids and family, the love you have for your neighbors, and then just what that seems to be gearing toward is just sort of the love, not the love of yourself, but the love that is anchored in you expressing love. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not that you're loving yourself, it's that you're focused on yourself as a lover.
Yeah. So that you can better love.
That you can better love. And
because when you're in your optimal state, you're able to give more.
Right. And yeah, and so if ultimately that turns toward a love of the world, right? Kind of in that classic Christian framework of, he loved the world, etc., right? But if you embody that love of the world, which I think is so central to a lot of Christian mysticism and spirituality as it developed over the millennia, even though I think it's somewhat lost in a lot of Christianity today, that seems right.
It seems right to me.
Like you love, and what was it? The world becomes better.
When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too.
Yeah.
It's kind of rising tides lifts all boats. If you improve your station, everything around you is going to improve.
Yeah, and I think what's missing from that is the reality that when you're improving yourself, you're never improving yourself. You're improving your relationship to other things that yourself is in relationship to.
Yeah, that's right. Because everything is in relation.
And that's why...
Relationship to your body, relationship
that last
to people.
bit, there's just sort of like a missing premise there about relationship.
Yeah. I watched a video that was talking about friendship, and that friendship in these years, in this current culture has lost or diminished the devotional quality of friendship.
Yeah.
That there's not as much just ring someone up on the phone call and you pick up the phone and you answer. These people are, it seems like this place that we allow romantic people to ascend to. Previously, we would allow a lot of platonic relationships to ascend to that same level, and there would be a devotional quality to friendship, to...
Yeah, I think there has been a disservice to things like friendship and to community in general by an over-focus in a lot of self-help literature and a lot of modern therapeutic approaches that really focus on the health of the person from this very egoistic framework.
Yeah.
And really treats friendship as this sort of transactional experience. What is that friend doing for you? If they're not serving you, then cut them out, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a healthy dimension to that is about toxicity, right?
Right.
But that's migrated to where I see people in my life that I'm friends with, and they're having troubles like maintaining their networks. But part of what I'm seeing is they're like, that person, what they're describing is really fundamentally annoyance or imperfection. Like, and they're kind of classifying it as like, well, that's not serving me. And that lacks that devotional element. Right?
Yeah.
That devotional element is about
acceptance,
being there when it's not just for you.
Yes.
Right. And ultimately, I think being there when it's not just for you serves you in the larger picture better. So there is kind of potentially an egoistic drive at the end of it, although I don't think you can anchor there, right? Because if you do, then you begin to micromanage things. And,
right.
Yeah. So, and you lose the forest for the trees if we're going to speak in idioms. But yeah, I think that's true. I do think when I look at my life, and maybe there's something developmental here too. I have friends, when I went and visited my friends in Portland, these are long-term friends. And I think of one of my friends, my friend Amanda. Part of what I realize I love about her and feel so devoted to her is because she comes from an approach to friendship like that. Like there are people, that like, you're like, hey, I need you right now. And I feel like if I really was in that space and she had the capacity to be there, she would be there. Right.
Right.
And all the friends I visited there, are those kinds of friends, but it's hard to develop those kinds of friends now. And I don't know if that's because it's hard to develop those kinds of friends when you're
older
at this stage
stages
of
life,
or if it was because the culture of friendship has shifted, or both, right? It's
Probably
likely both.
Probably both.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things. But yeah.
But I worry about trying to overmanage your friend environment. Like the number of people who I've talked to, including people very close to me, who are like, I don't like when people stop by unannounced.
Huh.
Because it feels like this intrusion and there's part of me that's like, that day when you're sitting around and a good friend just stops by, that's a gift. That's a joy.
Yeah, I remember riding my bike by you guys' house,
Right.
and y'all just be out there gardening or something, and then I'd pop
Right.
over and have a chat.
Yeah, and I do think like
And
that
that's
was
cool.
during the pandemic, and during the pandemic, there was this sort of like, because the networks closed down so much and became so localized, and like you were outside a lot more. And,
Yeah.
like there was a kind of renewal of that. And then we kind of lost it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of things I think we reconnected with in that space that people have gone like, well, we're through it. Let's go back to life as normal. It's just like, wait, there was some good stuff there.
It reminds
we should bring
me
it back.
growing up in suburban Houston on a cul-de-sac, and the power goes down.
Right.
And it's not because of weather.
Right.
So the power's out, and then one by one, people come out of their house, and then they start talking.
Right.
And then like, is your power out? No, is there power out? No. And then there's something.
And then suddenly you have community.
You have community.
Right.
And then the power comes back on, and people go back in their caves, and the magic that's there doesn't continue.
Right.